from a place we're not allowed to reveal. It's the Tom Leykis Show.
I'm fed up.
We all are, Tom.
And now, here he is, Tom Leykis.
Thank you for tuning in to the Tom Leykis Show. This is where America gets together to talk about the issues you really care about. It's a different kind of a radio talk program. We're the radio talk show that is not hosted by a right-wing whacker or a convicted felon. No, I am your host. Write down our telephone number. You're going to need it. It's 1-800-5800-TOM. 1-800-5800-866. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for being part of our program. Here we are together again on the radio. This headline from the Money column at MSN.com, the Money section. Single women slammed by housing mess. Here's part of the story. Eviction was not an option. That's what Melanie Griffiths-Evans kept telling herself. Even after the bank had foreclosed on her home in 2007. And was preparing to oust her so the house could be resold. After a series of financial setbacks, including the loss of a job, the single mother of three had fallen hopelessly behind in her mortgage payments. But Griffiths-Evans, 38, wanted dignity for herself and her children, a way to negotiate their departure without being thrown out. The Boston resident concedes. Now listen to this. This is the nub right here. The Boston resident concedes that her home in the Dorchester neighborhood, assessed in February at $265,000, was basically unaffordable when she purchased it in 2004 for $470,000, by the way, with no down payment. In order to buy the home without private mortgage insurance, or PMI, she had taken out two loans. Listen to the rate she got. One at 8.5% on 80% of the purchase price, and the other at a whopping 12.5% on the remaining 20%. As a result, her monthly payments, by the way, her monthly payments for a $470,000 home total about $3,500. You want to know something? That's about what I pay on my house in the Hollywood Hills. But she says she was assured by her lender that she could soon refinance into a lower-cost fixed-rate mortgage. Why would you believe that? Let's say the lender was lying. Don't you have an attorney look at this stuff? If you can't afford to take that paperwork to an attorney and pay him for an hour of his time to look over your material, you can't afford to buy the house, you idiot. If you can't afford to take all of the paperwork, loan documents, purchase agreement, and other paper materials that you are flooded with in the process of buying a house, if you can't take that paper to an attorney, you can't afford to own a house. It's that simple, girls. You can't afford it. Now it says here this woman found herself unable to refinance. And the lender, whom the Massachusetts State Attorney General, eventually barred from making loans in that state, stopped returning her calls. Unfortunately, it says here, troubles like Griffiths-Evans are becoming more and more familiar. It says here, over the past decade or so, single women have become a major force in the housing market. The proportion of single female home buyers climbed from 14% in 1995 to 22% last year, according to the National Association of Realtors. And by the year 2010, single women will make up about 28% of homeowners, Fannie Mae estimates. But those gains haven't come without a price. Several studies have shown that women, and women of color in particular, are more likely than men to be targets of subprime and predatory lenders. Why is that? Why is that? Huh? Did you say because they're stupid? Did you say it's because women don't care to learn about how numbers work, don't care to do any of the heavy lifting when it comes to looking at something that contains numbers? Did you just say that? Sexist. Says here that many of the women who have lost their homes to foreclosure could have qualified for lower cost loans. Maybe they should have done a little due diligence, huh? And although there are no data comparing foreclosure rates between men and women, subprime loans have a higher rate of default. Duh. So with foreclosure soaring, experts say women are at particular risk of losing their homes. Boo freaking who. Anita Hill. Remember Anita Hill? The pubic hair on the Coke can? Clarence Thomas? Yeah. Professor of Law, Social Policy, and, heaven help us, Women's Studies at Brandeis University in Waltham, Massachusetts said, even women with similar incomes as men were more likely to get subprime loans. Women were more likely to get subprime loans, and African-American women were even more likely. Women were advised they weren't qualified for prime loans, and in many cases that was erroneous information. Ever believe in getting a second opinion, maybe a third? Huh? Yeah. Says here the numbers were even worse when race was factored in. African-American women earning double the area's median income were nearly 5 times more likely to receive subprime mortgages than their white male counterparts. Again, it's called shop around, girls. Says here about 75% of the women facing foreclosure in the Washington, D.C. area between 2005 and 2007 could have qualified for better loans. According to one study by the Urban Institute, hey, if you could have qualified for a better loan, why didn't you? And why is that our fault? Jesus. Alan Fishbein, Director of Credit and Housing Policy at the Consumer Federation, said there's a lot of blame to go around. The borrower has to take some of the blame. But the mortgage industry gets most of the blame for the current crisis. Yeah. Fishbein suggests the reasons for the disparities are numerous and open to interpretation. Single women's wealth and earnings lag behind those of men and married couples, so these women have more difficulty obtaining credit, even though their credit scores are generally higher. Another study says women are more reluctant than men to bargain for the best mortgage deals. Whose fault is that? Whose fault is it that single women's wealth and earnings lag behind those of men and married couples? Whose fault is that? Jesus. I am so tired of these stories implying somehow this has to do with discrimination or sexism or what have you. Is it possible women are just too goddamn lazy? They have no interest in learning about money and how it works, banking and how it works, borrowing and how it works, lending and how it works. They're too lazy. They're not interested if there are numbers on the page. Their little eyes glaze over. It's politically incorrect to say that, but isn't that possible? Oh, single mothers and other single women are getting slammed by the mortgage crisis. Should we be concerned about this?
Tom Leykis. 1-800-5800-TOM. 1-800-5800-866.
Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like you. Definitely don't like you.
It's the Tom Leykis Show.
1-800-5800-TOM. That is our telephone number. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for being part of the program. Oh, there's the story on the MSN website. Single women slammed by housing mess. Boo freaking who. Let's say hello here to Kirk on the Tom Leykis Show.
Tom, long-time listener, first-time caller. How are you?
Great, Kirk.
Hey, I'm calling from down here in South Orange County, and I want to let you know that my opinion is that the single women that are slammed by these mortgage crises is because of their own ineptitude of understanding documents. It's absolutely atrocious to see how much these women just want to get into a loan, don't understand the documentation, what their obligations are, simply for greed, thinking that the housing market's going to continue to go up and up and up, all during that period of time from 2000 to 2005. And then under divorce or something like that, because they're saddled with some of the debt or they take over the loans, they plead that they still don't understand the loan documentation under divorce. It's phenomenal to me.
Yeah, boo freaking who, you know. I'm getting tired of these stories. Oh, these poor single women, single mothers, being thrown to their homes. And then you read the story and it says, well, it was unaffordable. The house was unaffordable. Well, if the house was unaffordable, why did she buy it?
Exactly. And who are these judges that are able to hand over these houses to women that can't afford it in the first place? And why is it that we as taxpayers are having a huge handout going to people that are defaulting on their mortgages, letting the taxpayers now pick up the tab for single women? It's ridiculous.
By the way, you're picking up the tab for the people who made a house too expensive for you to buy in the first place.
Not only that, Tom, but this is the big rub. Not only are we picking up as taxpayers going to have to foot the bill for this, but do you know that there's forgiveness of debt? So, for example, if they went out and bought a house for $700,000 and the bank marks it down for them down to $500,000, that $200,000 differential that they're not going to pay on, they don't have to pick up as income taxes. While everybody else on the planet before the enactment of that law had to show that as forgiveness of debt.
Outrageous.
Absolutely asinine. If the real taxpayers knew what the cost was for this type of thing that's going on right now, I mean, this applies to not just women, it applies to everybody in regards to the forgiveness of debt. But still, women that are going through divorce right now, where they are getting awarded homes, and then they go back and get this forgiveness of debt, it's just a big handout. And it's not just a handout that's coming from taxpayers. It's a handout coming from the general public at large, just men in general that have to then pay alimony to support that forgiveness of debt.
No doubt you are right, Kirk, and I thank you for that. Anastasia on the Tom Leykis Show. Hello. She hung up at the last minute. Dan, hello. Dan.
Yep. Hey, Father.
How you doing, son? Good.
Oh, long-time listener in the program. Just loving it.
Thank you, sir.
Beautiful. The program works. Just never get married. Don't have kids. Oh, it's awful. Anyways, hey, I wanted to comment. I think that it's the women that they're so stuck on being so professional and independent. They'll sign anything, a negative amortization loan, anything, just to be independent and professional. I love it, though, because I'm reaping the benefits. I waited to buy a home. I'm 24. I take home over $100,000 a year. I have $100 in the bank, and I'm just reaping the benefits of the low cost of homes, Aliso Viejo, all these areas that before I couldn't touch, and now people are stupid, especially
right when they throw these chicks out with their little brats. These homes will be available to you at low prices.
So cheap. A condo that was $600,000 before is $300,000, all because some idiot signed a piece of paper. Anything. Oh, it's beautiful. And
I love it.
I love it, too, and I think that people are so stuck, we're in such a crisis. We're in a crisis. It's a few idiots that didn't read a document that's signing their life over for years because they didn't read it. They're losing their homes. The rest of the people aren't in a crisis because gas is up 50 cents. Does $150 a month break it for me? No. So
you make some great points there.
It's beautiful, Tom.
I think it's great, Dan. Thank you for that call. It's 1-800-5800-TOM. We started this hour talking about an article that appeared on the MSN.com website. It's called Single Women Slammed by Housing Mess. And then the subtitle says, while the real estate market was expanding, single women benefited as never before. But when the boom went bust, guess which segment was among the biggest losers? Jesus. 1-800-5800-TOM is our telephone number. Jessica on the Tom Leykis show. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Great.
I'm calling. I'm 23 years old, and I used to be an executive assistant at a mortgage company. And I noticed, I was saying that I agree with you about 90% that women will get themselves into really ugly situations, and I think one of the main reasons for that is because women they trust too easy, like in general, and they're really easy sales. They just like hear the fluff and they trust it, and they'll sign the papers. And there's like the last caller was saying, a huge independent movement among women, especially in the African American community, like you were saying, as far as the numbers went. Just like listening to the music and everything. And so they're too quick to, instead of thinking about it logically, they do it more emotionally, like thinking they want the independence, they're going to have the house, they want all this, but they're not thinking about it clearly, and they're not, they're not as good hustlers as men, so to say.
Well, not so much hustlers, but let's face it, when you buy a house, you not only have to pay the mortgage on the house, you got to pay property taxes, you got to pay insurance.
They're not hustling because, like you were saying before on the radio, they're getting like one or two quotes and then they're settling. They're not shopping around. They're not going to an attorney. They're not like thinking about all these other things. They're not like trying to work it when you can work the numbers. They're just, okay.
I would never buy a house without an attorney. And before people say, you're rich, you can afford anything. In 1985, I bought a house for $71,000 in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah.
And that documentation, that paperwork went to an attorney.
No, I completely agree with that.
If you can't afford an attorney, by the way, not just an attorney, if you can't afford the proper insurance, if you can't afford property taxes, you can't afford a goddamn house.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I would be doing the mortgage, and I'm like, this is the appraisal cost, this is this, and they're like, oh my gosh, are you serious? And you're like, well, why are you buying a home right now?
I don't understand why people... Here's the other thing. If you can't afford something, why do you buy it?
I don't know. And it's kind of general again, but women get into debt quicker. So...
They get into debt quicker because they make less money than men, because they don't work as hard as men, because they don't put as much emphasis on going to the office as men do, and they buy more silly crap.
Yeah, they don't prioritize as well. I don't know about... I think not working as hard is kind of general, but I think not prioritizing as well and going out and making as much money is kind of true.
Yeah.
So.
Jessica, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Have a good day.
You too. Appreciate the call. 1-800-5800-TOM. That's our telephone number. This is Frank on the Tom Leykis show. Hello.
Hi, Tom. Yeah, I tend to agree with you that a lot of people got in over their heads and shouldn't have, male, female, whoever. I went out and looked at homes while prices were high, and I rejected a lot of mortgages they would have given me because I asked what happens when the rate changes. But isn't the industry itself also liable? Shouldn't they have been assessing the clientele that were taking these loans a little better?
Well, I don't think we should be bailing out banks or financial institutions if they made bad loans. I don't. But by the same token, I'm really not concerned about people losing their houses who couldn't afford houses in the first place.
Well, I agree, except that the loose money is what ran the prices up in the first place. I'm thinking the industry dug this hole, and yet they were the experts.
Yeah, but the fact is, look, it doesn't matter what the industry does. If you know you're buying something you can't afford, or worse yet, if you know you're buying something and you don't know any of the details, then you get what you paid for.
I agree, Tom, but the people on the other side of the desk were supposedly trained money management people, and I believe securitization drove some of this.
But this has nothing to do with it. The point is, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. It doesn't matter what the logic was behind cheap and easy money or, the things the salespeople said. When you buy a house, you take the paperwork from your lender and you go to an attorney and you have him read it.
Tom, I agree. I went to law school, believe it or not. But
these are people who cheap out, and they don't do that.
But the industry also had a responsibility to make a reasonable assessment of the...
And on that basis, I don't disagree with that. And on that basis, they should not be compensated for any losses.
I agree. Nobody should be getting bailed out here, Tom. But to just simply blame women... blithely, like
I'm just saying, anyone who bought a house they couldn't afford it deserves to be kicked out. I don't care what their gender, what their color. If you bought a house you couldn't afford, you deserve to lose it.
Well, then why the focus on dumb women and boo-hoo?
Because that's what the story says. And again, it isn't myself writing these stories. Feeling sorry for single mothers or single women who are victims of the housing crisis. It's these websites and magazines and TV shows.
But you do select the stories, and your bias is a little negative toward the
I don't
ladies.
see stories saying single men are being slammed by the housing mess.
Oh, well,
when there is one, I'll read it. Send it in.
Whatever.
Send it. If you have a story like that, send it right on in.
I'll look, but I don't generally...
By the way, this story was sent in by a listener.
Okay, I'm not arguing that, Tom. I'm not arguing stories not...
We read the stories that are written. We can't read the stories that are not written.
I know, Tom. But,
you don't see a lot of stories feeling sorry for the men losing their houses.
I feel sorry for everyone that got caught up in it, but...
I don't. I don't.
I feel sorry.
When you can't afford to buy something, don't buy it.
Oh, Tom, I agree, and I didn't. But I practice what I preach. But I think that our whole financial industry, they pump and dump everything. They'll do.
But that doesn't matter. You will never. By the way, I've never been a victim. I have never been thrown out of a house that I bought, including when I bought a $71,000 house. Do you know why?
Tom, not everybody's as smart as you.
Oh, so now it's the stupid people we need to protect.
Well, people that, I don't know whether you want to call them stupid.
I call them lazy. I call them lazy myself. Some of them are stupid. I think there's more lazy than stupid.
Could be, but then some people are...
I don't think we should be bailing out the lazy or the stupid.
Everything is such a specialty these days. Not everybody has
stop it. I'm not a specialist in real estate or in mortgages.
True. But when somebody goes to those people, they expect expertise.
Why would they expect that? I take my paperwork to an attorney. Anytime somebody puts a piece of paper in front of me that I don't understand, I call my attorney.
Not everybody who can afford a home can afford an attorney.
Then they can't afford a home, because affording an attorney to read the documents is part of affording a home.
Well,
that's part of the cost.
I still believe the financial institutions should have done a little more of their own due diligence.
They should have, but that has nothing to do with whether people deserve to lose their homes. All these greedy people who bought houses they knew they couldn't afford deserve to get kicked out.
I don't think they were greedy. I think we all want a nice home.
Well, I'm reading a story right here, the story I read earlier. It says here, and I want to get the exact quote, so I'm scrolling through here. It says here that the woman in the story... and in this case, her name is Melanie Griffiths-Evans.
Okay.
Conceded that her home, assessed in February at $265,000, was basically unaffordable when she purchased it.
Well, I agree.
If something is unaffordable when you purchase it, you know what you do? You don't purchase it.
Not disagreeing with that point. I'm just pointing out.
So I don't feel sorry for a person who buys something that's unaffordable, later gets kicked out.
Happy. Home prices are coming down. The the hockey stick.
And the reason the prices went up is because women like this went out and bought homes they couldn't afford.
Well, and
driving up the price of homes to everybody.
And the industry let them do it. They made cash flow freely.
There's no doubt they did, and I believe that we should not bail out the industry. I believe whatever mortgage companies go out of business or merged or sold, that should be allowed to happen without any bailout at all. But I also don't think we should bail out the greedy people who bought houses they couldn't afford and then moved right in.
No, I don't think we should either.
I don't think we should, but we should say, well, because of mortgage companies, we should allow people to indulge in their greedy behavior.
No, there's a lot of punishment that ought to go around, Tom.
Don't be buying anything you can't afford is my motto. It is what served me well my whole life, and that is why I don't get ripped off by mortgage brokers or anybody else. 1-800-5800-TOM. That's our telephone number. Chelsea on the Tom Leykis Show. Hello.
Good day, Tom. I'm so glad you're talking about this again, and it's kind of in a different format because you're basically talking about the article in Single Women, but it's funny you bring this up today. We were with a bunch of friends this past weekend, and one of my friends' sister, she's single. She's in the process of going through bankruptcy and losing her home, and she defended herself to the T. And I'm like, how can you sit there and defend yourself? You know, you made a mistake. Live with it and move on. You know, you lost your home. You didn't pay your mortgage. You couldn't afford it. And, you know, why should we all pay for your mistake? And I'm so sick of hearing people, you know, oh, boo-hoo, I'm losing my house. Boo-hoo for me. You should have never bought the house in the first place. You know what? I'm going to be very happy when I get into my home when I can afford it and I can afford the payments and my house doesn't own me. And I'm so sick of hearing everybody, you know, with losing their homes. You know what? If you made a bad choice and a bad decision and you didn't read between the fine lines, too bad. Become a renter. You know what? Figure it out. That's what
I was a renter here in L.A. for years. Because when I came to L.A. in 1988, it's 20 years ago, the housing market was going through the roof. And you had, if you can think back this far, or if you know about what happened back in the 80s, you had all these people all wringing their hands. The Japanese are coming to L.A. and buying up all the real estate. They're buying Pebble Beach. They're buying California. It's driving the price of everything to the roof. And then the Japanese economy went off a cliff.
Yeah.
And so suddenly all these people who paid these really high prices for houses in the late 80s, suddenly their houses were worth a lot less than what they paid. Oh, boo-hoo-hoo.
Yeah, I just don't have any sympathy. I've been waiting to buy a house, and I'm going to wait until I can afford it. And my husband and I have the money, and our house doesn't own us. We can afford to make our payments, and we can afford to live our life comfortably. And we can't say, oh, I can't go out to dinner, or I can't go out with my friends this week because I got to pay my mortgage and I can't afford it. You shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't have bought the house in the first place. I don't care how sweet the deal was. You know what? Someday you knew that was going to catch up with you. You know, I just think they're paying Peter, you know, to pay the piper and back and forth, and now it's all come to fruition. So I don't feel bad, and you know, I think it's opening the economy or the market up, just like the gentleman caller earlier, where there's opportunities and things are going to be priced at the right price.
These people, by the way, instead of feeling sorry for the people who are getting kicked out that they show on TV and in these articles, you should realize these are the people who forced home prices higher. So responsible people with good jobs and good credit couldn't afford them. The reason many people out there have not been able to afford a home the last 5 years is because these deadbeats went and bought houses they couldn't afford.
Yep, you're absolutely right. I totally agree with you, and it'll be interesting to see how this all pans out, but the best thing that people can do for themselves in this situation is go educate yourself. You know what did I do wrong, and what am I going to learn from this so I don't do it again? And you know what? Renting sucks, you know, but you deal with it, go find a place to live and get through this and pay your debts and move on, you know, but go educate yourself. And I think that's what these mortgage companies should be doing right now. You know, as far as people are losing everything, but why don't you come back and try to educate these people that you've screwed up their lives? I mean, I know it takes two, but they should be coming back to educate these people in some way, shape, or form. Or these people should be taking responsibility for themselves.
That is, if these companies are still in business.
Tom Leykis. 1-800-5800-TOM.
I think that you suck what you say about marriage, and it sucks that you're persuading all of these men all over the world who listen to your show to not want to get married.
The Tom Leykis Show.
Tom Leykis Show. 1-800-5800-TOM. That is our telephone number. Thank you for tuning in. It all started with a story on the MSN.com money website. Single women slammed by housing mess, the story said. Boo freaking who. 1-800-5800-TOM. That's our telephone number. Mark on the Tom Leykis Show. Hello.
How you doing, Mark? I'm sorry, Tom.
Great.
Listen, Tom, why are you so inconsistent?
How am I inconsistent?
I'll tell you what, you're sounding more like a Republican. You're
Again,
sounding more,
how, in what,
like,
instead of saying that, give me the specific way in which I'm inconsistent.
well, you're going for Obama, who Obama is the one who wants to give and help people with the mortgage situation.
That doesn't mean I have to agree with everything he says and does.
Well, well, there you go. There's your inconsistency, because you talk about
I don't agree with everything anybody says.
Why are you voting for Obama then?
Because we need to get George Bush out of the White House and anybody who would continue his policies.
George Bush.
I also happen to know that Barack Obama will not be able to do all the things he's promising to do because he has to get them through Congress.
Right, so you're voting for somebody who promises a lot of things that he can't do.
Most presidential candidates do.
Right, but see, you have a bias with...
And by the way, he's not promising to do things. He's promising to propose things. Everything he promises is pending the approval of Congress.
Okay, you have a bias that clogs your thinking. You sound responsible and you want people to take responsibility, yet you vote for people who will want the government to come in and save these people.
Oh, by the way, John McCain is saying some of the same exact things.
Well, George, you brought up George Bush, right? George Bush did not want the government to bail out these banks. Exactly what you're talking about, but yet Hillary and Obama do. And these are the people who...
Well, by the way, George Bush is the president. Who do you think signed off on whatever bailouts are going out right now?
Well, yeah, but you know why.
Who do you think did it?
Were crying, and George Bush initially...
So George Bush could have said, I don't care what you people say, I'm going to veto this. But did he?
He did. He did for a long while, and the Republican Party stands for personal responsibility, and yet you're over here promoting that.
Well, by the way, I don't agree. I don't agree that the Republican Party stands for personal responsibility. I believe the Republican Party says they believe in personal responsibility, but then they don't back it up. I believe in personal responsibility.
Well, George Bush came out saying he will not be supporting this, and yet Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and all the Democrats...
In the end, did he sign off on a plan to bail out banks and financial institutions and ultimately individuals? The answer is yes.
Well, why, though? There are many reasons why.
I don't care what the reason is, and this is not a political talk show, pal.
Well,
we're talking specifically about whether we should feel sorry, boo-hoo-hoo, for the, in this case, these single women who are getting slammed by the mortgage crisis. And I say no. Anyone who's getting kicked out of their house deserves to get kicked out of their house.
Why are you supporting, then, the Liberal or the Democratic Party?
Again, if you're going to keep repeating the same question, which I already answered, I'm going to hang up.
You're inconsistent.
Thank you. 1-800-5800-TOM is our telephone number. Boo freaking who. Go call KFI or some other station. It's more for your age group. Jesus. 1-800-5800-TOM. That's our telephone number. Let's say hello here to Dave on the Tom Leykis Show.
Tom, why are you so inconsistent? The guy couldn't even remember his own name. Remember, he picked up the phone. He goes, "Hello, Mark." He doesn't even know who he's talking to, and he's calling you inconsistent. He's just impotent and lame and needs to go away. But thank you for getting rid of him.
Sure.
Tom, it's just so funny that you have this topic because I just bought a house from a lady, and she bought it at the peak of the housing boom. In multiple offers, she paid over $1 million for it, and then she went in and put like $50,000-$60,000 worth of upgrades into the house. Just spending, flat panels all over the house on every wall. And then she gets in trouble and wants to sell the thing. I ended up picking it up from her for $800,000 a year and a half later. She lost $250-some thousand in a year and a half.
Boo-hoo-hoo.
And the funny thing, she's a financial planner for a major financial institution. And
of course she is.
People are giving her their money to invest. And she lost $250-some thousand of her own money. It's just unbelievable. I mean, that people are doing that. But, you know, on another note here, though, I mean, what created the housing boom was low interest rates on conforming mortgages. And I know you own property and other people own property out there, too, who are, you know, sound investors and they do their homework and everything. And every now and then you take a calculated risk. You may say, you know, I'm going to use a HELOC for a down payment and you know, guess that rates will be at, you know, 6.5% or 6%, and I'll be able to refinance that at some point. But you know, in today's market, there's a huge problem with the secondary market for jumbo mortgages. And if you go to Yahoo Finance, you'll see that jumbos are sitting out there at 7.5%. And basically, that's putting too much pressure on the housing market, and it's killing home sales. And eventually, people like you and me who invest in properties and buy properties that are good investments, we could see a huge drop in our values. Not that it's going to put our financial viability at risk because we took that into calculation, but I don't want to see that kind of a loss in value. And until they can figure out how to get these rates down on these conforming jumbos to around 6%, 5.5%, which is a good point. You know,
but this is a temporary situation. This situation is going to exist until the housing market bottoms out, which is probably at least another 6 months to a year away. And they're going to stay this way until the financial institutions, their issues go away, which will include some of them going out of business or merging or being sold or what have you. Only then will those the conforming jumbos and the jumbo loan interest rates go down. I bought a house in Santa Barbara County, and the house I paid almost $3 million for that. And when I tried to get a mortgage, I was in exactly the situation you're talking about. Couldn't get a house for less than 25% down. Interest rates were insane. And I just kept hammering away until I found a good loan.
Yeah, it's difficult. One of the best things you can do right now is look at credit unions, and they're a little stricter on who they lend to, but their rates are usually a point lower. But right now, if you go out there and try to go to a typical bank and try and buy a house in California anywhere, you're just going to affordability is the big issue here, and we need to get housing back to where it's affordable to buy a house. And with interest rates where they are on mortgages, it's not affordable, and it's killing the housing market. So I'd really love
But you understand, but the more that it's part of the free markets, the more the housing market is getting killed, the more prices are going to go down. When prices go down, everything will be more affordable. That's how it works.
Do you want your property to drop $1 million or two, the $3 million that you just bought, or are you comfortable with that?
Not if I planned on selling it in the next year or two.
I mean, you want to hold on to it in the long term, but, you know, there are a lot of good investors out there who would like to refinance their mortgages, and the banks need the business. That's the business that they're in. They're not going to see that business start flowing in until we see interest rates drop to the point that we're incentivized to go refinance. I have loans at 6.5%, 6%. I'd love to refinance some of those at 5.5% to free up some extra money to put in other investments. But until those interest rates come down, I'm kind of stuck. And
and a little bit tight. And
and they're not going to come down until a few more banks go out of business and others merge and others are sold or given away. That is when the rates will start to come down.
I hear you, Tom. Well, can you take me out Kobe style? And much love to you.
I certainly can, Dave.
This is about us. She's so special to me. Yeah, it beats in my heart. Yeah, the air I breathe. She's so special to me.
It's 1-800-5800-TOM. Here comes Nicole on the Tom Leykis Show. Hello, Nicole.
Hello, Tom. I love that you're talking about this subject. It boggles my mind that some of these callers have called in and seem genuinely upset that you feel the way you do. I don't understand it. I think that, my husband was in the mortgage industry, and both the banks and the people getting the loans knew that those loans should not have been given out. People were going in there saying, I make this much money. I make $100,000. But they had no proof of it. And those people knew that they were embellishing. And the mortgage companies knew that they were embellishing. And the banks knew it too. And it boggles my mind. It infuriates me that people really think that we, who are smart with our money, should be bailing out these banks.
The whole thing outrages me.
The Tom Leykis Show.